This week, as I was reading the Bible, I don't exactly know why, but I ended up here in Numbers 13 and 14, and I thought it was rather fascinating. Because to me it shows how one choice, one single choice, can drastically alter our life. If God asks us to do something, then He expects us to do it. And here we have an example of what happened in the Bible. And to me, it's just an amazing section of the Bible. So as I said, I'm going to kind of read Numbers 13, 1 and 2. And then I'm going to continue with Numbers 13, 26 through all the way to 14, 45. So it's going to be a lot of Bible reading because, well, like I said last week.
What version are you using?
NIV.
Abbreviated for New International Version and Grammar.
Say that again?
Abbreviated for New International Version and Grammar because I'm planning on going to grammar college in Florida soon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Numbers 13, 1 and 2. The Lord said to Moses, "Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites." That's a key verse right there. Which I am giving to the Israelites. For each ancestral tribe sent one of its leaders. But a key verse, which I am giving to the Israelites. He was already stating ahead of time, it's yours. Send some people there to check it out and to see what you think. But I'm giving it to you. That's a key verse. And then we move on to Numbers 13, 26. They came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite company at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. And if I don't pronounce some of these right, well. There they reported to them, to the whole assembly. What happened is they sent out the people, and the people came back. I'm just skipping part of the story because I can't read all that. If you want to call them spies, came back. There they reported to them, to the whole assembly, and showed them the fruit of the land. They brought back various things that they found in the land, and they showed it to everybody, and they gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which he sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we certainly can do it." After all, God already said He's giving it to them. But the men who had gone up with him said, "We can't attack these people. They are stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, "The land we explored devours those living in it." All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. So here, most of the spies that were sent out came back with the report that they weren't going to be able to take the land. Even though God promised it to them, they were going to be unsuccessful. They were afraid because, well, they saw some bigger people. The belief among many people is that some of these people ended with Goliath, that these people were 8, 9 feet tall. And it scared them. Rightfully so, but at the same time, God already said, "I am giving to the Israelites." 14:1. That night, all the people of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, "If only we had died in Egypt or in this desert. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to each other, "We should choose a leader and go back to Egypt." So already, despite that God has told them that he's going to give them the land, they are operating now in fear. They are afraid to move where God is telling them to move, and they're ready to get rid of Moses and Aaron as their leaders, and essentially they're getting rid of God as their leader because they're living in fear. They are worried about what the next step is. Then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes, and said to the entire Israelite assembly, "The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will swallow them up. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them." They're trying to remind the people. God already said he's giving us this land. They're not saying this, but kind of like what I said last week, they came out of Egypt, and God had them going in a direction, and that direction was to go into the promised land. And instead of looking at the direction that God had them going, they were saying, "We can't keep going because we're too afraid." He's already split the Red Sea. He's already gotten them out of Egypt. He's already had the plagues. All this stuff was done, and yet they're not looking backwards to see the direction that they're going to go forwards. That's what I was talking about last week when I talked about that. Because what I for the people that were not here last week, what I said was, oftentimes I will look backwards to see where it's like, okay, I fully believe that God had me do this step and this step and this step. So if I got here by walking that line that God is leading me on, if that was God leading me, then there's a direction that God is taking me. And that direction, at least in my experience, doesn't usually go this way or this way. That's usually my fear that takes me that way or that way. It's that straight line that I need to keep going in that God is taking me. And that's what the Israelites were doing, except they were like not looking backwards. They weren't saying, "Wow, God did all this stuff to get us here. He's going to keep taking us in that direction that we need." And so many times that happens to us, and we fail. We don't look backwards to see forwards. And that's exactly what the Israelites are doing here. But the whole assembly talked about stoning them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites. The Lord said to Moses, "How long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the miraculous signs I have performed among them? I will strike them down with a plague and destroy them, but I will make you into a nation greater and stronger than they." So now God is literally so mad at these people that he's done so much for them, and they're simply not acknowledging it, that he's saying he's going to just wipe them out. But the couple of people that are listening to God are going to be made into a great nation. And this part I find very interesting as well, because I've literally seen pamphlets at some churches that say essentially the concept is never question God. And yet here we see Moses seemingly change God's mind. Moses said to the Lord, "Then the Egyptians will hear about it. By your power you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land about it. They have already heard that you, O Lord, are with these people, and that you, O Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stays over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you put these people to death all at one time, the nations who have heard this report about you will say, 'The Lord was not able to bring these people into the land he promised them on oath, so he slaughtered them in the desert.'" So now, kind of like when Abraham was talking to, I won't allude to that. There was a time when Abraham, Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham was talking to God, and God said, basically, I'll summarize the conversation. God said, I'm going to destroy that place because it's evil. And Abraham said, well, what about if you find 50 people there that are righteous? Will you still destroy it? And God said, nope. And then Abraham bargained a little more. And he says, I don't remember the exact same number, but 25 people. God says, nope. Well, what if you only find, he gets down to, what if you only find 5 people that are righteous? God says, still, I won't destroy it for those 5 people. Well, as we know, he got a couple of people out and he destroyed everybody else. So apparently there weren't too many. But the interesting thing is that Abraham kind of bargained with God. And right now, Moses is saying to God, you don't want to kill all these people because then everybody's going to hear about this. And it's not going to look good on you because people are going to say you couldn't do it. And God says, yeah, I can do it. But that comes with a little bit of a caveat. Now may the Lord's strength be displayed, just as you have declared. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving sin and rebellion. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children for the sin of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th generation. In accordance with your great love, forgive the sin of these people, just as you have pardoned them from the time they left Egypt until now. The Lord replied, I have forgiven them, as you asked. Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of the men who saw my glory and the miraculous signs I performed in Egypt and in the desert, but who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promised on oath to their forefathers. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I find it interesting he didn't mention Joshua there. But that's something that I've been thinking about all week. When did he mention Joshua? Because Joshua is the one that becomes pretty much the leader over Caleb. I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Since the Amalekites and Canaanites are living in the valleys, turn back tomorrow and set out toward the desert along the route to the Red Sea. So God essentially changes his mind and decides not to kill them right then. But he decides that he's going to take them on the 40-year journey through the desert, in which he helped them. He gave them manna, he gave them stuff to eat, he gave them water. The people had a very tough time for 40 years, but at the same time, God helped them along. Could they have been in the promised land and been as happy as they ever wanted to be? Yes. But instead, they decided they didn't want to go that direction. They wanted to try to do it their own way. And when you try to do it your own way, I think that's when you end up walking through the desert for the next 40 years, and God may help you along, but you missed it. I oftentimes look at what God has me doing, and I always call it the leap of faith. It seems like I pray about something, and there is some kind of a leap of faith that is required, of trusting, of an enormous amount of trust. Just like when they're standing there and they're seeing these people that are 8 or 9 feet tall, and they're saying, we can't do this. But God is saying, you can do this. And they need to make that leap. But they were unwilling to make that leap. And that doesn't mean that God is going to leave you or kill you off right away. But the thing is that if you made that leap, if they made that leap, this story would be totally different. We would be reading about the Israelites going into the promised land 40 years earlier. The people that came out of Egypt would have been able to straight to the promised land. And God would have blessed them and loved them. And it would have been a totally different story that we see. But instead of taking that leap of faith, they decided they needed to try to do it their way. And God didn't abandon them. He obviously took care of them for the next 40 years, but he also waited until all of them died, except for a few people. But all the people that experienced coming out of Egypt didn't make it. They were not willing to take that leap of faith, so they never got there where God promised them to go to. At 14:26, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "How long will this wicked community grumble against me? I have heard the complaints of these grumbling Israelites. So tell them, as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you the very things I heard you say. In this desert your bodies will fall. Every one of you 20 years old or more who was counted in the census and who has grumbled against me, not one of you will enter the land. I swore with uplifted hand to make your home, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. As for your children that you said would be taken as plunder, I will bring them in to enjoy the land you have rejected. But your bodies will fall in this desert. Your children will be shepherds here for 40 years, suffering for your unfaithfulness, until the last of your bodies lies in the desert. For 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days you explored the land, you will suffer for your sins, and know what it is like to have me against you." The funny thing is he actually helped them. So, he may have been against them, but he still helped them make it for 40 years. Because without his help, they wouldn't have made it. He sent them manna, he sent them quail, he sent them water. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will surely do these things to this whole wicked community who is banded together against me. They will meet their end in the desert. Here they will die. So the men Moses had sent to explore the land, who returned and made the whole community grumble against him by spreading a bad report about it. These men responsible for spreading the bad report about the land were struck down and died of a plague before the Lord. Of the men who went to explore the land, only Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh survived. When Moses reported this to all the Israelites, they mourned bitterly. Early the next morning, they went up toward the high hill country. "We have sinned," they said. "We will go up to the place the Lord promised." Now they try to change their mind. They say, well, now that God's mad at us and has condemned us to walking around the desert for 40 years until we all die, now they say, you know what, we got to go try. But Moses said, "Why are you disobeying the Lord's command? This will not succeed. Do not go up, because the Lord is not with you. You will be defeated by your enemies, for the Amalekites and Canaanites will face you there. Because you have turned away from the Lord, he will not be with you, and you will fall by the sword." So Moses tried to tell them, you had your opportunity. You didn't do it. God has now made his decision. That's it. You're done. You go up there now, God's not going to take you into the promised land. Your choice is over. Nevertheless, in their presumption, they went up toward the high hill country, though neither Moses nor the ark of the Lord's covenant moved from the camp. In other words, God stayed at the camp. God didn't go with them. Then the Amalekites and Canaanites who lived in that hill country came down and attacked them and beat them down all the way to Hormah. And to sum up, I think that is an amazing passage, because I think it takes us kind of into the mind of God. And we can see that there's times that I have felt like God is leading me to do this or that, and it's like it may tick off some people. It may tick off, it may be something that I was not expecting. It could be anything. But the thing is that it's requiring faith. It's requiring hope. It's requiring trust. It's requiring obedience. And if we're in a relationship with God, hopefully we understand the direction that He has us going. And hopefully we do it. Because it doesn't matter how old we are or really anything else. He expects us to be in a close enough relationship so that we know what He wants us to do and that we say yes. And hopefully we have the strength and the faith to do so. Because we can see when we have a situation like the Israelites had, fear is not the answer. If God is taking us there, then God will take us there. And even if some people died going to the promised land, which they probably would have, God was with them, so less people than normal. But they're going to be with Him. So death is not really death. Death is just getting to go be with God. And I think that passage is so fascinating because it shows us that God is taking us somewhere. We need to keep going. We need to strive for that. We need to push for that. It doesn't matter who we irritate. It doesn't matter what we need to do. Nothing matters. We need to follow God. And just like, I didn't have a New Testament reading, but the New Testament reading can easily be when Jesus was talking. I don't know exactly where it is, but when Jesus was talking and Peter was trying to tell Jesus that he didn't need to go and essentially go die on the cross, and Jesus said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." Because Jesus knew what he had to do. And even though it was going to disappoint a whole lot of people, and even though it was going to result in his death, he did what he had to do. And that's what we all need to do. Thank you very much. Have a good day, guys.